We're now joined by former Deputy Secretary of State William Burns. He's the author of a new book, The Back Channel, a memoir of American diplomacy and the case for its renewal. Welcome to Face the Nation.
Margaret, it's great to be with you.
I hope this isn't saying that American diplomacy is dead.
No, it's not dead at all. In fact, I think it matters more than ever on today's international landscape, which is a lot more crowded and competitive in some ways than ever before. My concern is just that I think we're drifting right now, and that's the case for renewing diplomacy.
Well, I want to ask you specifically on the topic of Russia, because you spent a lot of time in Russia, you speak Russian, and you had a number of documents declassified for the book that you wrote, revealing private conversations you had. And one of them, you write about a one-on-one you had with Vladimir Putin in 2007. It stands out because he essentially, to you, to your face, threatened the U.S. If the U.S. interfered in their election, saying, don't think we won't react to outside interference. In hindsight, was that a preview of what happened in 2016?
It was a little bit of a preview, I think. You know, I mean, Putin is a very combustible combination, I think, of grievance and ambition and insecurity. And he's convinced that the United States has been trying to undermine his regime and the Kremlin, you know, going back to the color revolutions in Ukraine and Georgia 15 years ago. Now, the truth, of course, is those revolutions were about Ukrainians and Georgians, not Americans. But Putin came to the conviction that we were out to undermine him. And Putin, in my experience, is an apostle of payback. And so when he saw an opportunity in 2016 to take advantage of dysfunction and polarization in our own political system and interfere and sow chaos, he took advantage of it.
You talk a lot about the Trump administration towards the end of the book. And when it comes to Vladimir Putin, you basically say the president has a very wrong-headed approach to think that flattery or trying to be friends with Putin is going to get him anywhere.
No, I mean, I think foreign policy diplomacy, as you well know, is about advancing American interests. It's not about getting along with people. And I think if you saw the summit press conference between Trump and Putin in Helsinki, what you saw was, a really embarrassing attempt by President Trump to ingratiate himself with Putin and throw his own intelligence and law enforcement agencies under the bus. I think Putin reads that as a sign of manipulability, a sign of weakness that he'll try to take advantage of.
No, I want to point out to our viewers, because, you're not a talking head. You're a career diplomat.
Right.
You did this for 33 years, 5 presidents, 10 secretaries of state you served under. You speak Russian, you speak Arabic, you speak French. You've got a slew of awards from the intel community and the State Department. And they lay that out to say you were very careful in choosing your words. And when you write about the Trump administration, you say, it has diminished American influence on a shifting international landscape, hollowed out American diplomacy, and only deepened the divisions among Americans about our global role. Has the president hurt U.S. national security?
Well, I'm concerned that, just as I wrote in the book, that what you're seeing in this administration, especially from President Trump himself, is a worldview and a set of actions that are undermining our stature and our influence in the world. And it has real corrosive effect right now, I think. The truth is, President Trump didn't invent a lot of the problems on that landscape or a lot of concerns within our own society, but I think he's making them worse right now, too. This is a moment when the United States is no longer the only big kid on the geopolitical block. It's a moment when diplomacy, when our alliances, our capacity for building coalitions of countries, what sets us apart from lonelier powers like China and Russia, is more important than ever. And my concern is that we're squandering those assets right now.
Do you applaud his attempt at diplomacy with North Korea?
I do. I think the effort, including the effort to engage directly with North Korea's leader, started out as an admirable effect. I think the concern I have right now is that in the second summit meeting in Hanoi, we're giving Kim Jong-un an unearned boost in his stature. And I think we need to take advantage of the disappointment in Hanoi to reset our approach on North Korea.
Now, you helped lead the back channel talks that began the secret negotiations with Iran that ultimately led to the nuclear deal. President Trump pulled out of that. It still exists in some form, with the Europeans at least. What happens next to that deal? Do you see the U.S. on a trajectory to have a direct clash with Iran?
My concern is that, given the law of inadvertent collisions, we can bang into the Iranians, or our allies and friends can. There's so many combustible parts of the landscape in the Middle East right now, and that can set off a chain of escalation that can be very difficult to control. I do think it was a huge mistake to pull out of the Iran deal. I think it was the best of the available alternatives to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. And I think pulling out has added to the fissures between us and our closest European allies. In a way, it's done Vladimir Putin's work for him. And I think it's also eroded the long-term value of sanctions as an instrument of American foreign policy, simply because by unilaterally pushing for sanctions rather than working with our partners, we open up another area of vulnerability.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
The book is The Back Channel by Bill Burns.